From dog tags to ownership, heroes take the lead. Stories of veterans building dreams with passion, drive, and speed. From service to success, we're here to inspire the quest. Dog tags to ownership, we're the best. Take the prize.
From the battlefield to the boardroom, this is Dog Tags to Ownership, the podcast where veterans share their journeys from serving our nation to leading in business. Hear inspiring stories of grit, growth, and the entrepreneurial spirit that drives those who've served to succeed. Tune in and take the first step toward your own mission in entrepreneurship.
Military One Percenters, welcome to Dog Tags to Ownership, where once a week we interview veterans who charted a path towards entrepreneurship. Here, our goals are to share resources, advice, and success stories about starting a business, discuss strategies for building financial independence and creating your own path, and most importantly, build a community to support each other through the challenges of transitioning from service life to civilian ownership. Matt, here we are, May, the 5th month of the year, doing our May recap. And I think for our community, May is always a special month for the military community because it's Military Appreciation Month. We have Military Spouse Appreciation Day. And then it's also the month in which we pause on Memorial Day to honor those who gave the ultimate sacrifice for our country. As we get into this, May feels a little bit different for me, as May is my last month in the Army before I get my DD 214 next month and have my retirement ceremony and am done with the Army. So, for 2 decades, like you, a year later, having the uniform on and my last full month serving before retirement, I've been reflecting and been thinking about what life has been. I think probably like you did last year when you wrote your blog and all of those things. But I think for me, as I look at it, it's becoming real. It's honestly becoming a little bit emotional, because the uniform has shaped me for who I am. It's given me a purpose, gave me lifelong friends that we now do a podcast together every week, and then other lifelong friends that are out there, but taught me leadership, resiliency, sacrifice, and service. But I think the one thing for me as I look at this, and won't dwell on this too long, but it's prepare for the next chapter. And what does that look like? And the one thing that's been incredibly clear to me as I look at the next chapter is the uniform may come off, but the mission doesn't end. And although, we continue to serve and we continue to do those things, I think for me and throughout this month on Dog Tags to Ownership and the great guests that we've had in the month of May, it's enabled me to explore exactly what some of the different organizations, programs, and people are that are out there helping veterans, military members, military families transition and turn their dog tags into ownership. So that's my thoughts as I look at the next chapter. I'd just like to say at the very beginning here, I appreciate all the support that we have received in doing this podcast. The 73 episodes, 73 great guests that we have got to talk to, learn from, and really kind of figure out ourselves and what transition looks like and what some of those programs and resources are out there to help veterans. And I think for both of us, we want to continue to do that for those who are on the journey after us, and just really supportive and thankful for everyone who has done that and helped us build this podcast and the things that are coming next. So thank you to everyone for that. And Matt, thanks for, going through retirement first and kind of telling me what I need to do to get done with it. So I'll turn it over to you for your opening thoughts.
Yeah, rarely are you reaching out to me for, advice and some guidance on things. It's usually the other way around. But no, it's super exciting to be closing in on. I didn't realize, we're about to eclipse very soon, the triple digit mark of podcast episodes, and just kind of remarkable in that this started as again, we've talked about it, a text message over a year and a half ago now, and what it's become and what the snowball that it's created, and the relationships, especially that you've formed, the connections more so that you've made as a result of doing this podcast. I was watching some social media videos last night, and there's so much out there as far as approaches to create passive income and do things. And, one is better than the other is better than the other. But there's something to be said of creating a podcast that more or less generates zero income, but the doors that it's opened, the conversations that it's started, and how the podcast is growing into a much bigger movement. There is something to be said of following a passion that doesn't pay you initially, but provides purpose, direction, motivation to do other things outside of the podcast. And again, a lot of that goes back to connections and networking. I'm not a huge fan of networking, feels like not real personal. And I think with this podcast, we've created a lot of personal connections and relationships that will continue to grow in the future. Um, I had one other thought, and it was on your comments about transitioning out and what a resource this podcast has become for you, to get firsthand information. It's why you came up with this. As I think about it, maybe it was selfishly you created this so you could get all this information to make your transition the best it could be. But I think that's what this platform provides for folks, maybe that don't have an opportunity to take advantage of SkillBridge or some of those internship opportunities when they transition, because either there's a sitting battalion commander as you are, or they just don't have the time and they're focused on other things as they get ready to get out. But this is something that they can do when they're driving to work, as we did riding on a bus to the Pentagon, to get some lessons learned and to gather some information so that their transition can be a successful one, as you've done for the last several months now.
Yeah, and I don't think it was selfish that I created this, but maybe, maybe it was. I think maybe I was actually being selfish for you because you were the first in the shoot, and I knew if we didn't create this, you probably wouldn't do the things that you were supposed to. So have other people besides Dana and I telling you the things that you needed to do. So maybe it was that, and then the follow-on secondary benefit was that I also got the same thing. Is what I'm gonna say.
Yeah,
That
I meant to say selfless. I think it was selfless
yeah,
of you.
yeah, yeah.
I'll correct myself.
Yeah, selfless of me to help you, right? Uh,
Uh-huh.
so, all right. So I guess we can get into recapping
Sure.
our 3 episodes of May. Man, I just want to start off with we had some amazing episodes. So the first one in May, episode 18 with Rosella and Kenitra Scott, husband wife, dual military couple, who came on and discussed how they are building their business, because they are in the starting point of building their business. Them talking about that and talking about boots to business and that how that really like sparked the idea for her. And then episode 19 with Aaron and Nick Vandry of Bravery Bakehouse, who, had started a business, had to shut that business down, started a new one, and then utilizing resources that are out there to help them with that, such as Dog Tags Inc. and also DAV Patriot Boot Camp, and talking about how those resources, have really helped accelerate them. And then episode 20 with Daniel Gade and Terry Hill of JP Morgan, and talking about their journey and really discussing the JP Morgan backed program CEO Circle in coordination with IVMF from Syracuse University. So these 3 episodes really highlight turning your dog tags into ownership, but the programs and the resources that are out there for our military members, our veterans, our military connected who want to get into entrepreneurship. And that's one of the main reasons we created this podcast, is so that there's a one-stop shop about the different resources and programs that are out there. And so in these past 3 episodes, we really got to hear about some of those different programs that are really trying to help veterans get into entrepreneurship. It just goes back to it being Military Appreciation Month and how there are a lot of people out there who want to help veterans get into entrepreneurship. So I guess with that, we can start with episode 18 with Rosella and Kenitra Scott. and her saying, "Hey, why don't we work for ourselves? Why don't we start a business?" And they did. So now, they have an LLC, they formed it, they are getting their name out there, looking for clients. And so really similar to us, right? Like taking our transition and figuring out what we want to do prior to getting out and retiring and setting ourselves up to be able to do the things that we're passionate about once we retire. So hats off to both of them for doing that and what they're trying to do with Legacy Vanguard Scott Group. Turn it over to you for your thoughts on the two of them and episode 18.
Yeah, they were the dynamic duo, one of a couple that we had on the podcast this month. And you can tell why their marriage is successful and why they complement each other, with Rosella having the HR background and then Kenitra with a lot of the leadership experience, and how they're going to blend those together to build the next phase of their life after the uniform and the start of the new business with some of the early HR consulting. They have every opportunity, because of having completed a full military career, to have again that safety net to take an opportunity, to take a chance and do something with very little risk in moving towards building this business and this brand. They've already got a great website, very professional. If it doesn't work out, they can pivot, they can try something else. They're in the very initial phase of this. But again, take the chance, take the opportunity, follow the passion. If you are financially able to do that versus, running back into the 9 to 5 that may not satisfy all your needs. And they're able to do that because of the careers they've had and the approach they're taking post uniform.
Yeah, and I think that's, what you touched on there is having safety net, for them to be able to launch the thing that they are passionate about. But I think for a lot of folks, it's figuring out what you're passionate about before you get out of the military. And they were able to do that as they're looking for transition as well, to then say, okay, let's set this up and move forward. And that brings us to episode 19 with Nick and Aaron. And really so glad we had them on for Military Spouse Appreciation Month Day, because of the things that they are doing for the military spouse community in Bravery Bakehouse. And I'm not going to give it justice. So go and watch our social media where Aaron discusses why it's called Bravery, and it's spelled Bravory. Bakehouse, and the purpose behind them naming the business Bravery Bakehouse, because it is all rooted in military spouses and what they do on a daily basis. And so fortunate that we had them on to really amplify that message during this month of May, and the things that they are doing with Bravery Bakehouse and how they're giving back to the military community. Like that, yes, it is a business. It is a profitable business, and Nick calls it purpose-driven profitability is his term. And that's what they're doing on a daily basis with Bravery. And not only are they doing that, they're making some delicious cookies. So if you are in the North Carolina area, Southern Pines, Pinehurst area, go to their brick and mortar and pick up some cookies. So I'll turn it over to you for your thoughts, Matt, on them.
Just a really fun podcast and a really fun, upbeat couple. And we shared quite a few laughs, I think, just watching their back and forth and some of the banter. Nick talked about his, I think in maybe a discussion we had prior to the podcast, like his superpowers, and one of that being 80, and just again the energy he brings into everything that he does, and that was certainly captured on our podcast and the conversation. Another couple, I would say less new than Rosella and Kenitra on their business ownership, but they've seen their bakery business go through a couple different evolutions, and they've had to do some pivoting and some scaling in order to grow their brand. It's a really good episode to learn about the first steps or next steps as you navigate through what is never going to be a straight line process for any new business owner. So it's just good to hear about them, hear about their journey, and some of the tangible explanation they give to resources that they were able to take advantage of, much like Kenitra did with Boots to Business, to help kind of sharpen their knife and make their business successful. Just information packed, really enjoyable episode. Lots of fun with the two of them.
just highlight again the programs that they utilized when they had to do that big pivot from Kind Cookie Company to Bravery Bakehouse. They utilized Dog Tags Inc., which is here in the Northern Virginia, DC area. And it's an incubator type program to help those military members, veterans, military connected spouses. It's basically a fast-paced MBA program to help them with their business planning. And then Aaron went through that. And then Nick went through DAV Patriot Bootcamp, which if you followed us along, you've heard about DAV Patriot Bootcamp and the great things that they do. And Nick was, if you couldn't tell in that episode, Nick is a talker, I would say, to a little bit. And he went to DAV Patriot Bootcamp and he did the pitch competition, and that was his first time doing it. And he got second in the pitch competition, but it really enabled him to learn the skills of pitching his business and how to get the word out there. But then, of course, he gave the money away, which I would probably do the same thing. So no shame there, Nick. Totally understand why you did that because you are the epitome of a veteran and wanting to give back to the community. So, but I just want to, highlight that and the two programs that they utilize to really help them move their business forward in what they're doing. And then the last thing I want to highlight about them is when they had Kind Cookie Company, they mentioned that their biggest marketing thing was the big stickers they put on their car. So I brought that up to Katie. I said that I wanted to put that on the van, and I was met with a ton of resistance and told no. So if anyone out there, if you have any data or analytics around why you should do that for marketing, please send them my way so I can do some type of PowerPoint or something to show my spouse why we should put those things on our vehicle to help with marketing and word of mouth of our businesses, because I think it would be important. So that's my little plug for that.
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. I'll let her know you said that too. I'm sure you'll get a text later. And then our episode 20 was with Daniel Gade and Terry Hill. Daniel, both Army veterans, both West Point graduates. Terry spent 5 years in the Army, and then Daniel retired after 20 years, and he was wounded in combat and received 2 Purple Hearts. And after he retired, went on and did some things in the federal government policy, also state government in Virginia, and then, decided to go after entrepreneurship and did entrepreneurship through acquisition and bought his company Interfuse, and is now a part of another great program that's out there with IVMF from Syracuse University, which is JP Morgan backed CEO Circle, which is a 13-month, another incubator type program to help CEOs learning business aspects, but then also with the networking and the connection aspect of it. And they do one cohort a year for CEO Circle. So a great conversation around the resources that are out there. And I want to continue to drive home on that because May was about resources. It was about programs and resources for veterans who want to get into entrepreneurship, who want to turn their dog tags into ownership, and some of those things that are out there. And then also Daniel just telling his story and what it's like to become a business owner after acquiring a business. And I go back and watch our social media and his analogy with the 737 and what that's like once you acquire a business and you are, have the reins of the 737 on day one and what all that entails. So I'll turn it over to you, Matt, for your thoughts on that episode.
Yeah, while not a military couple or former military couple, it was nonetheless two folks that were on the podcast once again. I just kind of realized that as we're talking through all the episodes for May. But Daniel, being newer in the business ownership process, he's about 18 months in, and a great example of entrepreneurship through acquisition. So he acquired an existing company, and really interesting to hear him talk about his screening criteria for the company, why he chose the company that he chose. And a lot of it had to do with a company that had sort of proven itself and was established, and not wanting to get in there and have to turn something around. And I think he also mentioned he was sort of urged into business ownership from a friend of his that was really championing him in the process and saying, this is something I think you can do. This is something I think you would be great at. So this was not something that he grew up or was in the military thinking the entire time, I want to be the head of a company. I want to be a CEO, or I want to, create something. but someone else saw those characteristics in him, and I think that gave him enough to say, yeah, I can do this, and let me, kind of do some of my own research on seeing what fits and what works best for me. And then that sort of goes into, like you talked about, his initial time with the company. And I'll just say, you don't have to know everything. You don't have to have all the answers. So very similar to, I use an example of a commissioned officer, second lieutenant. You don't have all the answers. You're relying on your platoon sergeant. You're relying on others around you, your company commander, XOs, and everyone in between to help guide you along. And he's using that scenario as he's the owner and CEO of a company. And he describes the leadership style and everything he's doing and the culture he's building. Fantastic episode. So much good information in there. And yeah, take a listen.
I guess drive home those 3 episodes in the month of May and really looking at Military Appreciation Month, Military Spouse Appreciation Month, and how companies, businesses, programs, nonprofits are trying to continue to help veterans in that transition process and ensure that when the uniform comes off, it doesn't mean that we don't want to continue to serve something bigger than ourselves. And there are these programs out there and these resources that allow you to go through them to continue to serve and really help, build back our neighborhoods, build back our communities, our industries in America, and take the time to learn. We already have the skill sets when it comes to leadership, sacrifice, drive, purpose, motivation. We have those skill sets. Now, how do we turn those in our transition to lead organizations to help really build back, like I said, our communities, neighborhoods, industries in America. And then that brings us to Memorial Day. We are recording this episode before Memorial Day, and it will come out on Tuesday after Memorial Day. But I think for all of us, military members, veterans, military spouses, military connected community, Memorial Day is the time to recognize the sacrifices of those who paid the ultimate sacrifice to our country and to our nation. And it also reminds us that none of them were ever given the opportunity to transition, to build a business, to chase their dreams, or to come home. And so the best way that we can continue to honor them is by living lives worthy of their service. And by continuing to serve, by building our communities, by supporting one another, and helping veterans and military families thrive. As you look to close out May and Memorial Day, it's not just unofficial start of summer. Memorial Day is here for a reason, and it's to honor those who paid the ultimate sacrifice and to remember them. And the best way that we believe here at Dog Tags Ownership is that we can honor them is by continuing to serve, by building our communities, and by supporting one another and helping each other turn their dog tags into ownership. Just continue to live through that and to remember them in everything that we do. Military One Percenters, whether you're brainstorming your first business idea, already running a company, or just curious about where to start, Dog Tags the Ownership is the place for you. Please hit that subscribe button to receive all new episodes. Also, if you know someone who has turned their dog tags into ownership, drop us a DM on social media or tag someone. We are always looking for new guests to bring onto the podcast. And as always, Military One Percenters, thank you for your service. Let's continue this journey and working together to write our next chapter. Until next week, keep pushing to turn those dog tags into ownership.
From dog tags to ownership, heroes take the lead. Stories of veterans building trains with passion, drive, and speed. From service to success, we're here to inspire the quest. Dog tags to ownership, we're the best. Take the pride.